I'm Cal 35 and I built my tech company from nothing but an idea and determination. Growing up in a middle-class family that valued honesty, I never imagined my own brother would betray me. Marcus and I were close once, but as my company grew into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, something in him changed. The day I discovered those forged documents, claiming he owned half my company, my world shattered. But I wasn't about to let him steal what I'd built. If you're joining this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I took down my own brother with evidence he couldn't escape. Marcus is 5 years younger than me, and growing up I always felt responsible for him. Our parents worked long hours to provide for us, so I often helped him with homework, made his lunches, and taught him to ride a bike. We shared a bedroom until I was 13, and despite occasional sibling rivalry, we were genuinely close. I'd let him tag along with my friends, and he looked up to me with admiration that made me feel 10 feet tall. From an early age, I showed a natural aptitude for technology. While other kids were playing video games, I was figuring out how they worked. By 12, I was building basic websites for fun. In high school, I started a small business fixing computers for neighbors and teachers. Marcus never shared my interest in technology. He was more social, more interested in sports and being popular. When I left for college to study computer science, Marcus seemed lost without me. Our phone calls became less frequent as I immersed myself in coding competitions and internships. Meanwhile, Marcus struggled academically in high school, barely maintaining passing grades. Our parents worried about him but focused their energy on keeping him from failing completely. College was transformative for me. I excelled in my classes and connected with professors who became mentors. By junior year, I was already creating innovative solutions for real-world problems. My senior project caught the attention of a growing tech startup, and they offered me a job before graduation. I spent 4 years at that startup absorbing everything I could about the industry. I worked directly under the CTO, who taught me not just about technology, but about business strategy and leadership. During this time, Marcus dropped out of community college after just 1 semester, claiming it wasn't for him. He bounced between retail jobs, never staying anywhere longer than 6 months. At 27, I identified a critical gap in the data security market. Companies were struggling with secure data transfers, and existing solutions were clunky and inefficient. I developed a prototype for software that would streamline the process while enhancing security. My bosses weren't interested in pursuing it, so I made the terrifying decision to quit and start my own company. Those first 18 months were brutal. I worked from my tiny apartment, living on ramen and coffee. I maxed out 2 credit cards and drained my savings. There were nights I couldn't sleep, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Just when I was considering giving up and looking for a job, I landed my first major client, a mid-sized healthcare provider, desperate for better security solutions. That first big contract saved me. The client was so impressed with my software that they referred me to other companies in their network. Suddenly, I had enough money to rent a small office space and hire 2 employees. 3 years in, we had 15 employees and a reputation for excellence in data security. By year 5, we'd expanded to 50 employees and moved into a proper office building. Our client list included Fortune 500 companies, and we were winning industry awards for innovation. At 8 years in, my company was valued at $27 million. I had built something significant from nothing but an idea and perseverance. Throughout this time, Marcus continued his pattern of instability. He tried sales jobs, bartending, even a brief stint trying to become a personal trainer. Nothing stuck. Our parents were constantly worried about him, and I felt guilty about my success while he struggled. When Marcus called me saying he'd been fired again, I offered him a job in our sales department. He had the personality for it, charming, persuasive, good with people. I thought perhaps being part of something successful might motivate him to find his path. I paid for him to get proper sales training and assigned our best sales manager to mentor him. For the first year, it seemed to work. Marcus showed up on time, followed the sales playbook, and even exceeded his targets for 2 quarters. I was proud of him and hopeful this might be his turning point. Our parents were relieved, telling me how grateful they were that I'd helped him find stability. But during the second year, subtle changes appeared. Marcus began suggesting he deserved more credit for the company's success. At team meetings, he'd refer to decisions we made, implying he had input in executive matters. He bought an expensive car and moved into a luxury apartment that seemed beyond his salary. When I gently questioned these choices, he smiled and said, "I'm just living up to the family brand you created." Looking back, I should have seen the resentment building, the sidelong glances when clients praised my vision, the way he'd dismiss my early struggles, saying, "You just got lucky with timing," the increasing references to our company in conversations. But I was busy running a growing business, and he was my brother. I trusted him completely, a mistake that would almost cost me everything I'd built. The first real indication something was wrong came during our quarterly financial review. Our CFO presented reports showing several discrepancies in our accounts. Nothing major individually, a few unexplained expenses here, some irregular payment processing there, but together they formed a concerning pattern. Initially, I suspected accounting errors or perhaps issues with our new finance manager. "Let's dig deeper into these transactions," I told our financial team. "I want to know exactly where this money is going and why it wasn't properly documented." Their investigation revealed something unexpected. Most of the irregular transactions were connected to contracts that Marcus had handled. In several instances, clients had been charged for premium services that weren't part of our standard offerings or their signed agreements. When 3 separate clients called to complain about contract terms being different from what they'd verbally agreed to, I knew this wasn't coincidental. The modified terms all included higher fees and extended contract durations, each time the clients mentioned their understanding with Marcus. I called Marcus into my office after hours, making sure we wouldn't be interrupted. I laid out the evidence and asked for an explanation. His reaction surprised me, not defensive as I expected, but casual, almost amused. "It's just creative sales, Cal," he said, leaning back in his chair. "These companies have huge budgets. They can afford our services, and I'm just making sure we get what we deserve. I'm bringing in more revenue. Isn't that what you wanted?" "Not by misleading clients or altering agreements, Marcus. That's not how this company operates. It's not ethical, and eventually it damages our reputation." His smile faded, replaced by a flash of something cold I'd never seen before. But it vanished quickly, and he nodded contritely. "You're right. I got carried away trying to impress you. It won't happen again." I wanted to believe him. He was my brother, and everyone deserves a second chance. I reduced his client load and restricted his contract authority, requiring manager approval for all his deals. He accepted these changes with surprising grace, thanking me for not firing him outright. "I won't let you down again," he promised. "You've done so much for me, and I'm grateful." For a few weeks, everything seemed fine. Marcus kept a low profile, followed protocols, and even stayed late to help with a major proposal. I began to think the incident had been a misguided attempt to prove himself, rather than anything malicious. Around this time, I was in discussions with potential investors about a significant expansion. We needed capital to develop our next generation of security products and enter international markets. These meetings were confidential, with only my executive team aware of the details. Then I received an email from a potential investor addressed to Cal and Marcus Johnson, co-owners, regarding our recent discussion. But Marcus hadn't been at that meeting, nor was he a co-owner. When I questioned the investor, he seemed confused, saying Marcus had introduced himself as a founding partner in previous communications. That same week, a client called asking to speak with either of the Johnson brothers about their contract renewal again, referring to us as co-owners. A pattern was emerging that made my stomach twist with unease. I began paying closer attention to Marcus's behavior. He'd started attending meetings he wasn't invited to, offering input on executive decisions, and referring to long-term employees as our hires when speaking to newer staff. At company events, he positioned himself as my equal, making statements like, "Cal handles the tech side while I manage our business growth." The situation came to a head during a family dinner at our parents' house. Mom had prepared all our favorites, proud to have both her sons at the table. The conversation inevitably turned to work. "The company's doing really well," I shared. We're looking at expansion opportunities. Marcus jumped in immediately. We're considering several options. I've been pushing Cal to think bigger, you know how cautious he can be. Our parents beamed with pride. It's wonderful how you boys work together, Mom said, always supporting each other. Dad nodded in agreement. Your grandfather would be proud to see brothers building something together. Johnson men have always been about family first. Their words hit me hard. They had no idea Marcus had no decision-making authority in my company. He was creating a fiction, and worse, using our family's values to reinforce it. That night I couldn't sleep. Something felt deeply wrong. The next day I had our IT director install additional security cameras covering the executive offices and server rooms, setting them to record after hours. I also implemented new password protocols for sensitive company files. The IT director seemed puzzled by my sudden security concerns, but I simply cited increased industry cyber threats. Better safe than sorry, I told him, trying to ignore the voice in my head, saying I shouldn't need to protect my company from my own brother. 3 weeks after installing the additional security measures, I was working late finalizing an investor presentation. Around 10:30, I heard footsteps in the hallway, unusual since the cleaning crew had already finished for the night. Stepping quietly to my door, I saw Marcus entering my office with his own key. I hadn't given him a key to my office. I watched from the shadows as he sat at my computer, entered a password, and began browsing through my files. After 15 minutes, he left looking pleased with himself. Rather than confronting him immediately, I decided to understand the full scope of what was happening. The next morning, I asked our security team to pull the surveillance footage from the past month. What they found was disturbing. Marcus had been entering my office after hours at least twice a week, sometimes spending hours at my computer or going through my filing cabinets. I had our IT team conduct a forensic analysis of my computer. They recovered deleted search history showing Marcus had been looking for founding documents, investor agreements, and intellectual property registrations. Even more concerning, he had accessed our secure server where all legal documents were stored. The IT director also discovered unusual email activity in Marcus's account. He had been communicating with someone named Lawrence Diaz, whose signature identified him as an attorney, but not with any reputable firm I recognized. I asked our company lawyer to quietly look into Diaz. He's got quite a reputation, our lawyer reported back, mostly for helping clients with questionable legal maneuvers. He's been disciplined by the Bar Association twice for ethics violations. With this information, I authorized our IT team to recover Marcus's deleted emails. What they found left me physically sick. There were dozens of exchanges between Marcus and Diaz discussing the creation of backdated documents, showing Marcus as a 50% owner of my company since its founding. The documents look authentic, Diaz wrote in one email. With your brother's signature patterns from earlier contracts, I've created versions that will pass basic scrutiny. As discussed, the digital timestamps have been altered to match the company's founding date. Another email included attachments of the forged documents. They included an operating agreement, ownership certificates, and even fabricated meeting minutes, where I supposedly agreed to equal ownership with Marcus in exchange for his initial investment and business concept contributions. Everything I had built was claimed to be half his creation. Further investigation revealed Marcus had already approached 2 potential investors using these documents, presenting himself as the co-founder with equal decision-making authority. He had even scheduled meetings with our board members to discuss what he called leadership restructuring. The evidence was overwhelming and devastating. My own brother had not only betrayed my trust, but was actively working to steal half my company through fraud. The business I had built from nothing through years of sacrifice and hard work was under attack from within my own family. I sat alone in my office that night trying to process the magnitude of this betrayal. We had shared bunk beds as kids. I had taught him to throw a baseball. When he broke his arm falling from a tree, I had carried him half a mile home. How could the same person now be plotting to take what I had built? The next morning, I met with our company lawyer to understand my options. His assessment was blunt. This is serious criminal fraud, Cal. Document forgery, identity theft, attempted corporate theft. These are crimes that carry significant penalties. You have more than enough evidence for both criminal charges and a civil lawsuit. What about the company, I asked. Could his claims create legal problems, even though they're based on forgery? There's always risk when something like this goes public. Some investors might get nervous, and we could face temporary operational challenges. But with the evidence you've gathered, his claim wouldn't stand up in court. The bigger question is whether you want to pursue legal action against your own brother. That question haunted me. Despite everything, some part of me still wanted to protect Marcus. But I also knew this wasn't a misunderstanding or a momentary lapse in judgment. The emails showed weeks of calculated planning to steal what I had built. My immediate priority was securing the company. I changed all access codes and had Marcus's keycard privileges revoked. I informed the executive team about the situation in confidence, so they could help monitor for any further attempts at interference. I also placed our most sensitive documents in secure storage, where even I couldn't access them without witnesses. Next, I hired a private investigator to track Marcus's activities outside the office. Within days, they provided evidence of meetings with 2 major competitors and additional meetings with Diaz. They also discovered Marcus had opened a new bank account where he had already transferred significant funds that based on the timing appeared to be embezzled from the company through the irregular transactions we'd already identified. The investigators' report included photographs of Marcus touring expensive real estate and visiting a luxury car dealership where he test drove a vehicle costing over $200,000. He was already spending money he expected to get from taking over my company. The most disturbing discovery was a detailed timeline found on Marcus's cloud storage. It outlined his plan: present the forged documents to key investors, create doubt about my leadership, force an emergency board meeting, and use the investor support to pressure me into either accepting his fraudulent claim or selling the company with him receiving half the proceeds. The document included contingency plans if I resisted, including threatening to release fabricated information about company practices that would trigger regulatory investigations. He had thought of everything, including how to pressure me through our parents by convincing them I was trying to cheat him out of his rightful share of the family business. The depth and calculation of his betrayal left me reeling. This wasn't just opportunism or resentment, it was a comprehensive plan to take everything I had built, regardless of the damage it would cause to me, the company, our employees, or our family. As I read through all the evidence, my shock gradually transformed into something else: determination. Marcus had mistaken my love for weakness. He thought family ties would make me an easy target. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I needed to confront Marcus, but on my terms. I invited him to lunch at Valencia, an expensive restaurant downtown where the private dining rooms ensured conversations remained confidential. He accepted immediately, probably assuming it was a business discussion. When he arrived, I was already seated at a corner table. He looked confident, well-dressed in a suit that I suspected cost more than his monthly salary should allow. "Good to see you taking a break from the office," he said, settling in. "You work too hard, Cal." I smiled and ordered wine for both of us. I wanted to celebrate a little. The expansion plans are coming together faster than expected. "That's great news," he replied, leaning forward with interest. "What's the timeline looking like?" For 20 minutes we discussed the company's future while enjoying appetizers. I deliberately shared genuine details about potential new markets and product developments, watching him absorb information he clearly intended to use. His questions were too specific, too focused on investor commitments and ownership structures. After our main course arrived, I casually shifted the conversation. "I've been thinking about company structure as we grow. What are your thoughts on bringing in additional partners?" Marcus swirled his wine, considering. "I think we should be cautious about diluting ownership. We've built something valuable together, and maintaining control is important." The casual we hung in the air between us. There it was, the opening I needed. "Interesting you say that," I replied, keeping my voice level. "Since when did you consider yourself an owner of my company, Marcus?" His expression flickered briefly before settling into a practiced smile. "Come on, Cal. You know I've been there from the beginning. Maybe not on paper initially, but we always understood this was a family business." "Did we?" because I remember building this company myself while you cycled through 6 different jobs in 3 years. His smile faded. That's not fair. I was finding my path while you were already established, and I've contributed significantly since joining. The company wouldn't be where it is today without me. Contributing as an employee doesn't make you an owner, Marcus. He set down his fork, all pretense vanishing. I deserve more than just being your employee. I'm your brother. We're supposed to look out for each other. Is that what you were doing when you forged documents claiming to own half my company? The color drained from his face, but he recovered quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. I reached into my jacket and removed a folder, placing it between us. Copies of the forged operating agreement, ownership certificates, and meeting minutes, plus emails between you and Lawrence Diaz discussing the forgeries and how to backdate them convincingly. Marcus stared at the folder but didn't touch it. You've been spying on me. Protecting my company from fraud isn't spying, Marcus. It's due diligence. His expression hardened, all charm vanishing. You've always had everything handed to you. The brains, the opportunities, the recognition. Do you know what it's like? Living in your shadow? Hearing Mom and Dad constantly compare me to you. So this is about jealousy. You thought you'd just take what I spent years building because you felt entitled to it. I deserve half that company. His voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. I've brought in millions in sales. I've helped build relationships with key clients. Without me, you'd still be a small-time operation with your head buried in code. I kept my voice controlled. You were paid well for your work. But you were an employee, Marcus. I took all the initial risk. I went without a salary for 2 years. I built the products and reputation that make sales possible. And I was supposed to just work for you forever. Be grateful for whatever scraps you throw my way. His face flushed with anger. You're so self-righteous, Cal. You think everything you've achieved is because you're so special, so deserving. You got lucky and you know it. Luck didn't forge those documents. You did that. You betrayed me, our parents' values, and everything this family stands for. Marcus leaned forward, voice dropping to a threatening whisper. If you push this, I'll make sure everyone knows the real story. I'll tell the board about the corners you've cut, the promises you've made that can't be fulfilled. I have relationships with your investors too now. Who do you think they'll believe, the antisocial tech guy, or the person they actually enjoy talking to? They'll believe evidence, Marcus. And I have plenty. He studied my face, perhaps finally realizing I wasn't going to back down. What do you want? Your resignation. Today, no severance. He laughed, a cold sound I'd never heard from him before. Not happening. I've worked too hard for this. Either we renegotiate my position in the company with equity, or I'll burn it all down. Try explaining forged documents to your precious clients and investors. Even if I lose, your reputation will be destroyed. I stood up, placing money on the table for the bill. You've made your choice then. This isn't over, he called as I walked away. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I turned back one last time. Actually, I think I'm just beginning to see exactly what you're capable of. As I drove back to the office, my phone rang. It was Richard Blackwell, our largest investor. Cal, I received a concerning call from your brother about company leadership. He's suggesting there are significant operational issues being hidden from investors. Is there something we should discuss? My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Richard, I was just about to call you. We have a serious situation with Marcus that I need to brief you on. He's no longer authorized to speak for the company. That contradicts what he told me about his position. He provided documentation showing co-ownership. Those documents are forgeries, Richard. I can prove it. I'd like to meet with you as soon as possible. There was a long pause. This is highly irregular, Cal. Marcus has scheduled a board meeting for tomorrow morning to discuss these concerns. My blood ran cold. Marcus was moving faster than I anticipated. That meeting was not authorized. I'm the CEO and majority owner, and I did not call a board meeting. I think you should both attend tomorrow and sort this out. 9 a.m. at our offices. After hanging up, I received 6 more calls from board members and investors, all with similar concerns raised by Marcus. He had launched his plan, forcing me to defend myself against accusations while trying to expose his fraud. The calculated nature of his attack was breathtaking. That evening, my parents called. Their voices were strained as they asked me to be reasonable and work things out with my brother. Marcus had clearly reached them first, painting himself as the victim of my greed. "He says you're trying to force him out after all he's contributed," my father said. "We raised you to value family above money, Cal." "Dad, he forged documents, claiming to own half my company. He's committed fraud." "He says those were always the terms of your arrangement," my mother interjected. "That you promised him partnership from the beginning but never formalized it." "That's completely false. You know I started this company alone. Marcus didn't join until 5 years later as an employee." "People remember things differently," my father replied. "Surely there's a compromise that keeps the family together." I realized Marcus had manipulated them completely. "I have to go. We'll talk after tomorrow's meeting." I spent the night preparing for battle, knowing my brother was doing the same. The company I'd built and the family I loved couldn't both survive intact. Marcus had ensured that with his betrayal. First thing the next morning, I gathered my executive team and our company lawyers. The situation required complete transparency with those I trusted most. "Marcus has forced an unauthorized board meeting for 9 a.m., I explained. "He's presenting forged documents, claiming co-ownership, and making accusations about company mismanagement. We need to be prepared." Our lead attorney, Patricia Winters, took charge immediately. "We need forensic document analysis on these forgeries. I have a specialist who can examine them today." Our CFO volunteered his team to compile complete financial records, showing Marcus's actual role and compensation history. Our CTO began gathering server access logs and email records, documenting Marcus's unauthorized activities. By 8 a.m., we had assembled considerable evidence. The forensic document examiner confirmed the forgeries, identifying specific inconsistencies in paper age, ink composition, and digital creation dates. More importantly, he found microscopic printing characteristics that traced the documents to a specific print shop in Marcus's neighborhood. "This is professional work," the examiner noted. "Whoever created these knows what they're doing but rushed it. There are several technical errors that prove these couldn't have been created when dated." Patricia dispatched her investigator to the print shop, where they found an employee who remembered Marcus. With some persuasion and assurance of legal protection, the employee admitted to altering dates on the documents at Marcus's request. He agreed to provide a sworn statement in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Meanwhile, the financial team reconstructed every transaction Marcus had been involved with, identifying several instances of funds being diverted to external accounts. The total approached $300,000, not enough to cripple the company, but a significant sum that constituted clear embezzlement. Our IT department recovered additional deleted emails, showing Marcus had approached 4 competitors with offers to bring client information and proprietary technology details if they hired him in an executive position. They also found evidence that he had downloaded confidential product specifications and client lists to personal storage devices. The security team compiled video footage showing Marcus accessing restricted areas after hours on 17 separate occasions over 3 months. They also documented his copying of physical files from secure storage and photographing confidential documents with his personal phone. As the evidence mounted, I felt increasingly conflicted. Each new discovery reinforced that legal action was necessary, yet I struggled with the knowledge that pursuing this would permanently destroy my relationship with Marcus and potentially fracture our family. "We have more than enough for criminal charges," Patricia advised. "Forgery, fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage, these are serious offenses with significant penalties." "What about civil options?" I asked. "We can file for an emergency injunction preventing him from claiming any ownership or speaking on behalf of the company. We'd follow with a civil suit for damages and defamation. But honestly, Cal, given the criminal nature of these activities, law enforcement should be involved." I nodded, the weight of the decision heavy on me. "Let's prepare both approaches. I want to see how the board meeting plays out before deciding next steps." While the team assembled our evidence into a comprehensive presentation, I spoke privately with each board member and key investor by phone. I provided just enough information to counter Marcus's narrative without revealing our full case. I understand these allegations are concerning, I told each of them. I ask only that you reserve judgment until you've heard both sides and seen the evidence at today's meeting. Most were receptive, though some remained skeptical. 2 expressed particular concern about potential public fallout if family drama spilled into company operations. I assured them protecting the company's reputation was my priority. At 8:30, Patricia received a call from her investigator. They had located Lawrence Diaz, the attorney who helped Marcus create the forgeries. Facing potential disbarment and criminal charges, Diaz was willing to provide full documentation of his work with Marcus in exchange for leniency. He says Marcus approached him 6 months ago, Patricia reported. He has their initial consultation notes, where Marcus explicitly stated his intention to claim ownership he wasn't entitled to. He's prepared to testify that Marcus knew exactly what he was doing. This was the final piece we needed: clear evidence of premeditated fraud rather than a misunderstanding about verbal agreements. Marcus had methodically planned this betrayal for at least half a year, all while working alongside me and attending family dinners as if nothing were wrong. As we prepared to leave for the board meeting, I received a text from my mother. Please remember he's your brother before anything else. Family is forever. The message twisted something inside me. Marcus had clearly been working them hard, positioning himself as the victim rather than the perpetrator. En route to the meeting, the private investigator called with one last discovery. They had traced the funds Marcus embezzled to multiple sources. Some went to personal expenses, but a significant portion had been used to bribe 2 junior employees for access to secure systems and to pay Diaz for the forgeries. He had compromised others in his scheme, potentially destroying their careers as well. The comprehensive timeline we'd assembled showed a calculated progression Marcus had started, with small boundary tests, accessing files he shouldn't, inserting himself into executive discussions before escalating to document theft, forgery, and approaching investors. Each step had been planned to build his false narrative while undermining my credibility. As we pulled up to the building where the board meeting would take place, Patricia placed a hand on my arm. Are you ready for this, Cal? Once we present this evidence, there's no going back. Your relationship with your brother will likely never recover. I thought about the brother who had once looked up to me, the family dinners, the shared childhood memories. Then I thought about the systematic betrayal, the lies, the willingness to destroy what I'd built, and harm innocent employees in his pursuit of what he hadn't earned. Marcus made his choice, I said finally. Now I'm making mine. We arrived at Blackwell Investments 30 minutes before the scheduled meeting. Richard's assistant seemed surprised to see us early, but showed us to the conference room where we quickly set up our presentation and distributed materials to each seat. I want everything ready before anyone else arrives, I told the team. We're controlling the narrative from the moment they walk in. At 8:50, board members and investors began arriving. Each received a sealed folder marked confidential as they entered. I greeted them individually, projecting calm confidence, despite my churning stomach. At precisely 9, Richard Blackwell called the meeting to order. We're here to address concerns about company leadership and ownership structure raised by Marcus Johnson. I see materials have been distributed, but let's hold those until we've heard from both parties. Is Marcus here yet? He appears to be running late, I replied. But with your permission, I'd like to begin, as the matters at hand are quite serious. Richard nodded, and I stood to address the room. Thank you all for coming. I understand you've received concerning communications from my brother Marcus Johnson regarding company ownership and management. Before he arrives, I need to share some difficult but important information. I began methodically presenting our evidence, starting with Marcus's employment history and actual role in the company. I showed organization charts, compensation records, and his original employment contract, clearly identifying him as a sales employee, not a founder or owner. Next came the surveillance footage, showing Marcus accessing restricted areas and copying confidential files. The room grew tense as I played selected clips of him photographing documents and downloading files to external devices late at night. I was explaining the financial discrepancies when the door opened and Marcus walked in 15 minutes late. He froze momentarily, seeing me at the podium with our evidence displayed on the screen behind me. "What is this?" he demanded, looking around the room at the somber faces of board members. "Why did you start without me?" Richard gestured to an empty chair. "Please have a seat, Marcus. Cal is presenting some information relevant to the concerns you raised." Marcus sat down stiffly, eyes darting between the screen and the unopened folders in front of each board member. I continued without acknowledging the interruption, moving to the core of our case. "In these folders, you'll find forensic analysis of documents Marcus has presented claiming co-ownership of the company. The analysis conclusively proves these documents are forgeries, created recently but backdated to the company's founding." The room filled with the sound of opening folders and shuffling papers as board members examined the evidence. Marcus's face paled. "This is a misunderstanding," he interjected. "Those documents formalized our verbal agreement. Cal and I always intended to be partners." I played the recording from our lunch conversation, where Marcus had explicitly threatened to burn it all down if I didn't give him what he wanted. His own words echoed through the conference room. "Either we renegotiate my position in the company with equity, or I'll burn it all down." "Is that your voice?" Marcus Richard asked, his expression grave. Before Marcus could respond, I introduced our final witnesses. The document examiner presented his findings in technical detail. The print shop employee described Marcus's specific requests for backdating. Finally, Patricia connected Lawrence Diaz via video conference, who confirmed Marcus had knowingly commissioned fraudulent documents. "He was explicit about his intentions," Diaz stated. "He wanted documents that appeared to be original from the company's founding, showing him as a 50% owner when he knew that wasn't the case." Throughout these presentations, Marcus shifted from denial to anger to desperate attempts at justification. "Cal promised me partnership," he insisted. "Maybe I took inappropriate steps, but only because he refused to honor our agreement." "Do you have any evidence of this agreement?" Richard asked. "Emails, witnesses, anything besides these proven forgeries." "Our parents know it was always the plan for us to build this together," Marcus claimed. "Ask them." "We did," I replied quietly. "They confirmed no such agreement was ever discussed with them, and they were surprised by your recent claims of co-ownership." This was a calculated risk. I hadn't actually spoken to them since their call the previous night, but I knew my parents well enough to be confident they wouldn't have corroborated Marcus's lie if directly questioned about specific details. Marcus's face contorted with anger. "You've always been the favorite, always had everything handed to you. I deserved a piece of this company after everything I've contributed. Your contributions as an employee were compensated with a generous salary and commissions." I responded evenly. "That doesn't entitle you to ownership." "This is all manipulation," Marcus shouted, standing abruptly. "He's twisted everything to make me look like the villain. I have documentation proving my ownership rights." "The documentation you presented has been definitively proven to be fraudulent," Richard stated firmly. "Do you have any additional evidence to support your claims?" Marcus looked around the room, finding no allies among the stone-faced board members. "This isn't over," he threatened, pointing at me. "You'll regret this, Cal. Family is supposed to look out for each other." "Yes, it is," I agreed softly. "That's what makes your betrayal so profound." Security had been quietly called during the presentation and now stood at the door. Richard nodded to them. "Mr. Johnson, I believe it's best if you leave now. Any further communication should go through legal representatives." As Marcus was escorted out, his final glare contained pure hatred. The moment the door closed behind him, the room erupted in concerned questions from board members and investors. I held up my hand for silence. "I understand this is disturbing. I want to assure you that the company's operations and financial position remain strong. Marcus's activities have been contained, and no proprietary technology or client relationships have been compromised." Patricia outlined the legal steps we were taking: an emergency injunction, preventing Marcus from claiming ownership or representing the company, freezing of accounts, containing embezzled funds, and potential criminal charges for forgery and fraud. "Our priority is protecting the company while minimizing public attention to these events," she explained. "We're prepared to handle this discreetly and decisively." The meeting continued for another hour as we addressed concerns and outlined our containment strategy. By the end, the board unanimously expressed support for my leadership and approved resources for legal proceedings. After the meeting, Richard pulled me aside. "I've seen a lot in business, Cal, but family betrayal like this, it's particularly brutal. Are you certain you want to pursue criminal charges? There might be less damaging ways to resolve this." He didn't just attack me, Richard. He was willing to harm the company, our employees, and our clients to get what he wanted. I can't ignore that. Richard nodded solemnly. "For what it's worth, you handled this with remarkable composure. Lesser leaders would have been destroyed by something like this." That afternoon, I filed a police report with our complete evidence package. Detectives interviewed me, and key witnesses immediately recognizing the seriousness of the fraud. By evening, they had issued an arrest warrant for Marcus. He was taken into custody at his apartment that night. The news reached me via Patricia, who had coordinated with law enforcement. Along with the forged documents, police found additional company files, client information, and evidence of communications with competitors, strengthening the case against him. I issued a brief factual statement to employees explaining that Marcus was no longer with the company due to serious policy violations and reassuring them that operations would continue normally. Only the executive team knew the full story, and they were instructed to maintain confidentiality. I personally contacted our major clients to address any concerns before rumors could spread. Most appreciated the transparency and professional handling of the situation. A few requested additional assurances about data security, which we promptly provided. The following days were consumed with legal proceedings, security audits, and damage control. Marcus was released on bail pending trial, but served with restraining orders preventing him from contacting me, entering company property, or communicating with employees or clients. Throughout this period, I received multiple calls from my devastated parents, who struggled to reconcile the son they thought they knew with his actions. "How could this happen?" my mother kept asking. "Where did we go wrong with him?" "This isn't your fault," I assured them. "Marcus made his own choices." "But to press charges against your own brother," my father said, his voice breaking. "Isn't there another way?" Their pain was perhaps the heaviest consequence of Marcus's betrayal. They had prided themselves on raising sons with integrity and family loyalty. Now they faced the collapse of that belief and the public spectacle of one son prosecuting another. As difficult as it was, I stood firm in my decision. Marcus had shown no remorse, only rage at being caught. The evidence was overwhelming, and the planned betrayal too calculated to dismiss as a momentary lapse in judgment. When Marcus's lawyer approached with an offer, Marcus would plead guilty to lesser charges if I dropped the more serious ones, and agreed not to pursue civil damages. I declined. This wasn't about money or vengeance, but accountability and consequences. "He needs to understand the severity of what he's done," I told Patricia. "I won't make this easier for him." The preliminary hearing was scheduled, and I prepared to testify against my own brother, knowing it would permanently alter our family forever. There would be no going back from this, but then Marcus had ensured that the moment he decided to betray me. The legal proceedings dragged on for 4 months. Marcus initially fought the charges, vigorously maintaining his claim that we had a verbal partnership agreement that justified his actions. His attorney portrayed him as a misguided brother, trying to claim what he believed he deserved rather than a calculated fraudster. This narrative collapsed when the prosecution presented the complete evidence trail. The methodical nature of the forgeries, the documented planning, and the testimony from multiple witnesses painted a picture of deliberate, premeditated fraud. Most damaging was Lawrence Diaz's detailed account of Marcus, explicitly requesting documents he knew to be fraudulent. Facing overwhelming evidence and potential prison time, Marcus finally agreed to plead guilty to multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. In exchange for the guilty plea, prosecutors recommended a reduced sentence, 2 years probation, full restitution of embezzled funds, and 200 hours of community service. He would also have a permanent felony record, restricting his future employment opportunities. At the sentencing hearing, the judge addressed Marcus directly. "The calculated nature of your actions against your own brother and his company shows a disturbing lack of ethics and family loyalty. While I've considered the prosecution's recommendations for leniency, understand that you're receiving this reduced sentence only because of your brother's willingness to accept these terms. Many in his position would have pushed for the maximum penalties. Marcus avoided eye contact with me throughout the hearing. When given the opportunity to speak, he offered a brief formal apology that sounded rehearsed and hollow. There was no acknowledgement of the deeper betrayal or the damage to our family. Our parents attended the hearing sitting in the middle of the courtroom, unable to choose sides between their sons. Their expressions reflected the grief of witnessing their family torn apart. After the sentencing, they approached me hesitantly. "We've seen all the evidence now," my father said, his voice heavy. "We had no idea what he was doing. We would never have defended him if we'd known the truth." "I never thought you would," I assured him. "Marcus manipulated everyone, including you. Will you ever be able to forgive him?" My mother asked, tears in her eyes. I considered the question carefully. I don't know. I can work toward not letting anger consume me, but trust is different. Some betrayals change relationships permanently. The company survived the ordeal remarkably well. Because we had controlled the narrative from the beginning, presenting a united front to investors and clients, there was minimal external damage. In fact, several board members later commented that our handling of the crisis demonstrated exceptional leadership and integrity. I implemented comprehensive new security protocols, including dual authorization requirements for sensitive documents and regular forensic audits of financial transactions. We also updated our legal structure to create ironclad ownership documentation that would prevent any similar claims in the future. The experience changed me profoundly. I had always prided myself on being trusting and giving people second chances. Now I found myself more cautious, more inclined to verify, rather than assume good intentions. This new vigilance felt like a loss of innocence, but also a necessary evolution. In the months following the sentencing, I reflected deeply on the warning signs I had ignored. Marcus's increasingly proprietary language about the company, his casual boundary violations that I excused as enthusiasm, his resentment thinly veiled as jokes. Looking back, the pattern was clear, but family loyalty had blinded me to what was developing. The hardest lesson I told my therapist during one session is accepting that sometimes the people closest to you can cause the most damage, not because they're strangers who don't care, but precisely because they know your vulnerabilities and trust points. Working through these realizations was painful but necessary for healing. I couldn't change what happened, but I could integrate the experience into a wiser, more discerning approach to both business and relationships. 6 months after the sentencing, I established the Business Integrity Foundation, which provides resources and legal support to entrepreneurs facing intellectual property theft or fraudulent ownership claims. The foundation particularly focuses on helping family businesses establish clear boundaries and ownership structures to prevent similar situations. Through this work, I met Jeremy, a young tech entrepreneur whose cousin had attempted a similar scheme to take over his startup. Sharing my experience helped him navigate his own situation more effectively and with less self-doubt. "I kept thinking I was overreacting or being too suspicious," he told me. "Hearing your story made me realize protecting what I've built isn't selfish, it's responsible." Helping others facing similar betrayals became an unexpected source of healing. Each person I advised or supported in protecting their business helped transform my painful experience into something constructive. My relationship with Marcus remains severely damaged. He completed his community service and continues to make court-ordered restitution payments, but we have no direct contact. I occasionally hear updates through my parents, who maintain relationships with both of us, but respect my boundaries by not discussing him in detail unless I ask. The most significant change has been in my perspective on success and what truly matters. Building my company had been my primary focus for so long that I sometimes defined my worth through that achievement. The betrayal forced me to reconsider what I valued and why. I realized that while creating something valuable is worthwhile, the integrity with which you build and protect it matters more than the achievement itself. I had defended my company not just because it was mine, but because it represented years of honest work and supported the livelihoods of dozens of employees who trusted me. Today, my company continues to thrive. We've expanded internationally and launched several new products. The crisis actually strengthened our team culture as those who remained demonstrated extraordinary loyalty during a difficult time. I've learned that some relationships can't be repaired, and that's okay. I've also learned that protecting what you've built isn't selfish. It's an obligation to everyone who depends on it and trusts in its integrity. If there's one message I'd share from this experience, it's this. Trust should be both a gift and a responsibility. Give it generously, but verify consistently. Document clearly, communicate explicitly, and address concerns immediately. In business and in life, clarity prevents most conflicts, and integrity should never be compromised, even for family. Have you ever had to stand up for something you built, even when it was painful? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support more content about navigating difficult business and family situations. And remember, protecting your work isn't just about defending what's yours. It's about honoring the effort, integrity, and vision that created it in the first place. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to protect what matters most in your life.